the Nico Penguin YouTube channel, Facebook page for productive gamers by a gamer with your host Nico Penguin. And today we are joined by an actual professional comedian, entertainment network owner, a pro wrestler fanatic, author, and an esports commentator, Flobo Boyce. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Wow, you put it like that, I sound like I'm super important, man. So glad to be here on Thanksgiving night. This is gonna be crazy. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw your resume, I said, "How can I book Flobo? Because what you look like a superstar. Like what you do everything. What don't you do?" Is what I was thinking.
Word, get myself noticed. That's what I don't do, right? But it's all good, man. Nico.
No. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Happy holidays to you, since this is
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. And I just want to jump in because this is a gaming based podcast. And I wanted
Did
to
you
ask.
eat yet today, or are you gonna do this afterwards? I'm
Oh
curious.
no, I am stuffed right now. It's
Okay,
it's
okay.
9 p.m. on the East Coast. I'm stuffed.
Okay.
I ate like
Respect.
2 hours ago, and I'm still full. Now, but we're just gonna jump right in. What is your favorite game system? Because as somebody who has a lot of professions, you must have something that you prefer more than others.
Now more than ever because of the games I cast, and it's easier production wise. It's the PC. I
Oh,
guess that's what it
okay.
is. But like I still am an Xbox guy. Like
Okay,
Xbox
okay.
all over. I mean, even my controller is an Xbox controller. When I do like my own casting things.
Mhm.
There's a time where Windows to me had better design. I had a Windows phone. I was the only person on the planet with a Windows phone. Life until I had to like get myself off that platform because it sunsetted. So yeah, I have the Xbox One currently. I'm actually was gonna buy the Series X for the Black Friday, so I'm pretty much in
Ooh.
that ecosystem for forever.
Ooh, and so since you are a shoutcaster, can you let everybody know what sport or esport you do shoutcasting for?
Yeah, I dabble with smaller things like Formula One and WWE 2K22, but the main one is Rocket League. Rocket League is a game that I got into when I was having a tough spot in my life personally, and so I
Mhm,
love this
mhm.
game so much that being able to just share my excitement with other people over this game. And for those who don't know, I'm sure your listeners do, but like it's basically it's cars playing soccer. So it's my job to like make every move count, make you feel something even though there actually are machines. It's not like Smash Brothers. We can see Mario wince when he gets punched in the face. I mean,
Mhm,
these are
mhm.
like machines, and so it's really up to me to like really give you that kind of home feel. So primarily Rocket League. I was able to do RLCS, the top flight, in
Mhm.
different regions like South America and sub-Saharan Africa. But I do dabble whatever that's needed because since I do IRL professional wrestling commentary, sometimes it's kind of like we see the hype guy, get him.
Yes, yes. No, so I wanna know, how did you get into that? Because if you played it, how did you
Yeah.
get into being the one behind the voice, behind the box, and how did you get into the behind the scenes aspect of it?
You know what? I don't want to call it luck, man, but it was a cascading bits of like serendipitousness. You know what I mean? Like it was the pandemic, so I was playing just an hour or so. I started my own business. Right, put
Mhm.
a setback. I started my own business, and I was getting stressed out. I wasn't working, so I would take an hour and play the game. I got familiar with it during the pandemic. About 6 weeks later, I joined a senior circuit for players over the age of 30 of the game Rocket League, and they're going to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
their tournament. They called it a quarantine tournament because back then we thought the quarantine's going to be like 3 weeks long, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they said, "Hey, look, man, you're a can't sit up comedian. We've listened to your albums. Just tell some old people jokes while we're playing the game because we're old
Oh.
men or old
Right,
women
right.
who are playing." So it was my job was to be like, pull over, Grandpa. It's time for your nap, or have some prune juice, or whatever. And I did that for the tournament with the senior series esports crew. And at the end, someone pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, man, you need to do casting
Hmm.
for like a career." And I'm from a time and period like I'm in my mid to late 30s, and I'm a time where I recognize video games, but like games is something you did an hour a week if you did your homework. Like a whole
Right, right.
career, a whole esport thing was still pretty new to me. But they go, "No, get on Discord." I'm like, "What's a Discord? I'll teach you Discord." And that became a thing. And so I showed up to any gig I got. I worked for free for a long time. I
Mhm.
worked for like rec leagues. Any gig I got there a half an hour early. I thanked all my co-casters and the production people because they were basically holding my hand, how
Right.
to work vmix, how to work the discord, how to work
Mhm.
voice chat. My first ever setup was a MacBook Air and a Blue Yeti in front of my Xbox in my living room. So even before I had a
Oh.
computer, I
Mhm.
was doing this. And so it kind of just became like, hey, you sit there, you were consistent, you work for free for a bit, and you weren't a jerk. That's when people go, hey, that guy Novanta, he's like, he's not bad. Give him a shot. And every time I said I got a shot, I just took it because I had nowhere to go. I was a
Right.
comedian that couldn't go to comedy clubs because it was the pandemic. And so it's been two
Mm.
years and I've been able to do a lot of things. And it just one thing after the other, man. It worked out for me.
Wow, that's actually so interesting from being a player to being pretty much recruited and scouted out to be almost kind of forced to do it. But it's only because you do such a good job. Now, I always wanted to ask somebody who did commentary is how do you not run out of things to say, especially when the action is either stale, there's nothing really interesting going on. How do you hype even that up, or how do you come up with things to talk about that doesn't detract from said game?
So it comes down to three things. One, your co-caster, right? If your
Mm,
co-caster is if you're joking with them, you have a good rapport, then you can basically go off on tangents and make jokes and stuff, right?
mhm,
Second, on the surface, a lot of times you can say everything without saying a thing. And what I
mm,
mean by that, if you mention the score, the time left in the round, what they need to do to get back even for the losing team, what they do to secure a victory for a winning team, you could eat time without actually saying something. You can say, hey, look,
oh,
90 seconds ago, Team B is down by 3 goals. It will take a lot to get them in the game, but I know they really want to do that because everyone here is watching them on stream. I have told you nothing about the game,
right,
but
right.
that's enough to keep you engaged until something does happen. But on top of that, because in the game of Rocket League, I'm was considered a low level player. Like for context, I'm not sure if you're fans or Rocket League fans. I'm Diamond 2, which
Mm,
means I'm like top 30%, but that's not nearly as good to be a pro player. So
right.
I've been clapped before. I've lost by a lot before. So I usually land on the psychological, right? What does it mean to score a goal for pride? What does it mean to be
Mhm.
faster just to beat your opponent one more time? What does it mean to sit there and slip through a goal when no one really thinks you have a chance? And so I think a lot of it comes from that. And of course, there's always humor, right? You can always say, hey, look, nothing's really going on. They're down by 12, but we're going to be here. We know exactly what we're doing. You know what I mean? And at first it becomes kind of weird because you think you're catching at things to say, but over time it really becomes second nature.
And have you ever witnessed a slaughter like that before, like a 12-0?
No, I've seen a 13-2 before. That was pretty fun.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
I definitely wanna know, what are your favorite moments, if you're able to say, about, anything that you witnessed that was either really funny or, like, a very, very, like, David and Goliath moment like that?
Oh man, so there's the game itself, right? Because like there's like those come from behind wins. There was a game I
Ooh.
forgot what series. I think it was Frost, where one team was up with a Barcelona, which is when you have 8 goals and your opponent has two,
Mhm.
and then that team that had the 8 goals lost the game, right? So that was kind of fun to
Oh.
say, come from behind 6 goals. But
Mhm,
like when it comes down to like the kind of moments you remember, it's when in my career I got asked to do ROCS, but in a separate region. So
mhm,
ROCS is like the top flight for Rocket League.
mhm.
ROCS and North America or Europe is like the circuit, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like there's other areas too, like Oceania, North Africa, and the Middle East, and in my case, Sub-Saharan Africa. So even though they're smaller regions, they treat it as if it's that. So here in the West Coast, I live in Los Angeles. So here in the
Mhm.
West Coast, to get ready for a African tournament or South African tournament, I'm up at like 5 o'clock in the morning,
Yeesh.
5:30 a.m. to warm up my voice for 6 a.m. showtime.
Mm.
And even though that is rough, especially when you partied the night before or worked the night before, it does make you feel like you're professional, like you feel like you're part of the game, that someone's booked you, they've
Right.
asked you, and you show up and you say, oh my gosh, welcome RLCS. It's a small region that's growing. Let's have a good time. And I remember those moments the most, like doing that for women's carball, which is a women's league,
Mhm.
Sub-Saharan Africa, South America. Those are the ones that you go, hey, look, no one's really giving you the hype because you're in these small regions. I'm gonna give you that hype.
How do you find something to say in those moments?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know what? There's a lot of things to pull from. The players themselves, the names of the players, the time on the clock, your co-caster. Sometimes I ask my co-caster, you know what? You're a better player than I am, quote unquote. How would you do it? My idea is
Hmm.
my mission number one when
Mhm.
I'm in the casting booth, 'cause typically I work color, right? I'm an analyst. I
Mhm.
like to think there's one person who's never seen Rocket League or the game I'm casting before at all. So
Mhm.
I say that not to talk down to them, but I want to be able to ask the dumb questions or break down why a play is important to make sure that people understand. So when you have a play-by-play, they're going to town over what's
Mhm.
happening, they will throw it to you and go, "Yep, and he missed once again." I go, "You know what I've really realized here? Blah, blah, blah. This guy has tried 3 times and missed. I wonder if they're frustrated. What do you think what do you think, chat?" You know what I mean? Just to make sure they're engaged. Because one of the things about esports, a lot of the people who grew up with esports don't realize it's
Mhm.
still a foreign concept to those of a certain age. If you're 25
Right.
or older, it's like, wait, people are getting paid. People are getting pulled out of school
Yeah.
to do esports. And so I think I'm that bridge to be like, no, this is a big deal because this person takes 12 hours on their training packs to make sure that play is possible. Here's why you should be cheering them. I think that's all the difference.
Well, so out of all the things, you focus on the priority uh that bridges pretty much two different generations. The generation that grew up playing and the generation that just saw it as a negative stigma.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I would say the one word is psychological, right? I can talk about
Mm,
the action on screen, but you can see it. My play-by-play is describing it, so I got to find something else that no one's talking about or no one can see themselves. It makes no sense for me to be like, well, they just missed that one. That's pretty bad. Like that makes them feel bad, right? If you're playing, you can imagine again as a low-level player, you're
mhm,
on stream, you miss an open net, or you didn't get the headshot if you're playing like Call of Duty or Valorant and
yep.
your caster's dunking on you like, well, that's how it be sometimes. Right? No, but you said, okay, well, they had an opportunity there, but it didn't work out for them. I bet if they had another opportunity, they will want to make sure it's a dead shot for them. I hope that happens. I'm rooting for them. That's a psychological aspect of that player that's playing, and anyone who's played that video game, because unlike traditional sports, you can basically download the game today, and if you're
Right.
good enough, join a team. That's something they internalize. Because when it comes down to IRL sports or esports, we all have that fantasy of being
Mhm.
the one that carries the team ourselves. We all
Facts.
have that fantasy of being the hero or the World Series or whatever. I like to say that I want to be able to help you feel that win or lose.
Now, when you're commentating, do you find yourself having trouble maintaining your hypeness? Like when you see like a come from behind win, how do you like maintain your composure? Because we already discussed how you keep it fresh when it's boring, but
Yeah.
how do you not explode into a fit of excitement when it's like really popping?
I think some excitement's okay. I think if you allow yourself to be a fan while maintaining your professional aspect of it, that stuff is pretty cool. But one of the things I tell newer casters when they ask me this, which is weird because I feel like I just started casting yesterday, but it's been 2 years now. It's been two and a
Right,
half
right.
years. Is that don't confuse hype with volume. So many new
Mm.
casters are like, oh, what a shot! And then when nothing happens, it goes, I always say, if you want to know what hype is, I say, imagine imagine you are coming to my house for a party and
Mhm.
it's like 7 p.m. The music's blaring. I go, oh, what's up, Nico? Thanks so much for rolling by. Here, you bring the ice? Great. And then I say, imagine a party where I invited you and I want you to be there, but I got a really like nosy neighbor that's going to call the cops. Yo, hey, Nico, thanks so much for coming by. Drop the ice. I'm still engaged with you. I'm still hype.
Mm.
My volume is different. And that helps out 2 ways. One, you don't blow out your voice when you're doing these things because every goal can't be amazing.
Right,
And
right.
two, that makes you way more dynamic with your co-caster because there's some co-casters are very like, and then this is the shot, this is what happened, this will go. And there's some co-casters who try really hard to be like, welcome to an exciting edition. And as the color, typically, it's my job to be complimentary. So if that person's super hype, I
Mhm.
come down to make sure we have a bit of a balance. And that person's here, I go up to give that some sort of like dynamic balance. So once you understand the difference between hype and volume, it opens you up to really serve the show to make it more of an entertaining endeavor.
Man, that's actually pretty interesting having so many different vantage points and things to think about with esports commentating. Because, before I would just think like, wow, like this guy right here, he's super energetic. I want to hear him more. Or, man, that one right there, he makes the game. That was an amazing comeback. Like, why did it feel so boring? He had no energy in his voice. And the way that you're breaking it down, it's like almost like a masterclass of how to like
Thank you.
communicate. That is so intriguing, and you've only been doing that for 2 years?
Yeah, you know what? Also, I think a lot of people who start like to be play by play because people think about being the person on the call, and so when that's why they call color casting the second spot.
Mhm.
And a lot of people who may be play by play go, okay, I'm in the second spot. I'll just say my thing while I'm going. But I could treat it as a show. The person who's doing play by play is I let them be the smartest person in the room. I let them be
Mm.
the one to really let me know what's happening. I
Mhm.
always ask, "Hey, what would you do in a situation while we're having to run a game?" It's my job to say what they're saying, break it down in a funny way or a simplistic way that if you didn't know the mechanics of what's happening, you'll know why it's a big deal. And I think so many color casters don't do that because so many color casters see themselves as the hero casting the fantastic goal or moment. But when
Uh-huh.
that moment's done and it's my turn to talk, I can't say, that was a good goal. You're right there, Nico. I got to say, well, think about the goal, but look about the defense. This is why this is important because they split the defense with about 10 seconds of goal, and now they have the go ahead's opportunity. Again, you fill in the parts that weren't said. And if you're watching that as a neutral, you go, oh my gosh, that goal was amazing, or that shot was amazing, that formation was amazing. I'm invested. I don't have a side or a team, but I have one now because of how they did it.
How do you wow, that was a very good breakdown. How do you even pay attention to what wasn't said? How do you know, like how you just mentioned, if the play-by-play, mentions how the play went, the goal was scored. How do you focus on the things that weren't commented on? Because you did mention that you're a top 30% in the game, but how do you know what they didn't say that was a key importance to the overall play?
Sure. A lot of times people focus on the offense because that's the forward action, right? So unless it's a save out of everyone's mind,
Mhm, mhm,
right? That's why I always say, but if you don't know what to do, if you're like lost at sea, do the opposite. If someone's talking
mm,
about the offense of a team, say the defense. If someone's talking about a fantastic save or block, you go with the offense. But over time, you'll notice that depending who you work with, they tend to
mhm.
focus on certain players or certain formations or certain teams. There's a lot of things that haven't been said. There's about team chemistry is an aspect I was talking about, or individual frustration for a team that's tried so hard to get forward. I'm trying to be as nerd as I can because I know you have audiences from different sports, but the idea of being frustrated that you couldn't move the payload in Overwatch, for example, you know what I mean?
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
there's really aspect you can tap into and say, hey, look, as a fan, I'm wondering what would you do if you had three opportunities to win this round and you didn't do it and you're still playing? Do you say, let's drop this game and move on? Or do you just try to lock yourselves in? So a lot of it is listening to your play-by-play if you're a color. And if you're the play-by-play person, you want to be able to be consistent with your calls to give your color caster some opportunity to chime in there. Because you're recovering offense and defense and time and everything in your call. You've totally blocked out any opportunity for your co-cast, the person supposed to make your show great, to
Mhm.
say anything. And that kind of makes it sound like a one-person endeavor.
Man, that is so intriguing. And before I even continue asking questions, I do want to give you the opportunity to let other people know where they can support you, whether it's the esports commentary as well as the other things,
Sure.
because you have a list of things that you do. And I want everybody that listens today to give you the opportunity to, follow and support you.
Oh, so personally, I'm at Flobo Boyce. You can see that right here. That's available on Twitter and also Instagram. But if you want to know more about my casting itself, I'm under Novanta RL. That's Novanta RL. Novanta is Italian for 90. So Novanta RL. That's available on Twitter and on Instagram. You'll see clips of my casting, clips of me actually playing the game of Rocket League, and some of the things I've casted on as well for different sports like F1 and WWE 2K2. And look, if you want to know more about me personally and how I somehow survived college to be an adult, check out my book. It's called Graduation Day, available now on Amazon. Graduation Day is available. It has some really cool life lessons in there. You probably love it.
Man, yo, now you gave me so many more questions now.
Let's
Uh,
go. Let's go,
so
baby.
so when you how did you overall get into the pro wrestling aspect? How did you become a fan, and how did that career open up for you?
Yeah, so lifelong fan. When I was a kid, I used to watch WWE, WWF Superstars and
Mhm,
WWF Wrestling Challenge. I worked on this network that went down during the pandemic called AfterBuzz TV.
mhm,
They did after shows for shows, so I was a after show host for NXT and WWE Raw. So every week I came in because wrestling has no reruns, and I
mhm,
would break down the action, the matches, and talk about that. That got me a job with Spotify for about a year and a half on one of their shows called MackMania,
mhm,
where me, Evan T. Mack, and Jack Farmer, when we met at AfterBuzz, we break down wrestling week in and week out. That just got sunsetted last week. But in doing that, having the hours of just looking at wrestling, which is basically theater in the rounds, and
mhm,
and discussing not only the wins and losses, but character motivations and
mm,
costumes and storylines. I got asked to do some commentary for local promotions. In 2011, I was a backstage interviewer for Mach 1 Wrestling in Anaheim. I did a couple shows for Republic of Lucha in Pasadena. I don't know if you have any wrestling fans here, but in AEW, there is a tag team called the Lucha Bros, Ray
mhm,
Phoenix, Pentagon, El Cerro Medo. They own this shop in Pasadena called Republic of Lucha. They start running their own shows in the backyard. I
mhm.
did one of the commentary for that. So in a way, I was a lifelong fan, familiar with the content and material, but that mixed with my appreciation of like structure and having shows and giving people a chance to interact on these broadcasts, these podcasts, opened a lot of doors for me as a professional. And so that kind of works with the esports. The esports works with the wrestling. It kind of goes back and forth.
Now, how did you get so well versed in public speaking? Because if you're also a professional comedian, that means
Yeah.
your talent is your voice. So, how did you enter into the realm of speaking in front of people, as well into the realm of being comfortable speaking in front of a mic?
So I'm deathly scared
What?
because
No.
my day job is I'm actually a wedding DJ too. So like my day job, which is
Oh.
nights and weekends, I get in the microphone and I go, please welcome newlyweds or whatever. But I don't want to make the show too dark. But my life's goal was to
Mhm.
always try stand up. And
Mm.
this is a little backstory. So I used to be very, very heavy. I used to weigh 375 pounds. For those of you who don't know what that means, that's like I wore my t-shirt was a size 6 extra large. My jeans
Yeesh.
were a size 56-inch waist. And I did it, I lost the weight naturally, but I had a lot of skin in my gut or whatever. I had like loose skin because I was so
Mhm,
big for so long, and I got the skin removed. And about 3 days after that skin removal surgery, which was called a fleur de lis amnioplasty, a part of my scar line had reopened up, and I almost bled
mhm.
out and died
Oh
on
my
my
goodness.
couch, just as a complication. And when you are about to die, you get kind of nervous about that, and then you get
Mhm,
kind of like cool with it. You're like, well, I had a good run. And I had two big regrets. I mean, the small regrets. It's always like, oh, man, I wish I dated more people. I wish I had more money. But I had two big regrets. It was I never rode a motorcycle, which I did, and I never tried comedy, stand-up comedy,
Mm,
because I was a fan of the Tonight Show and Jay Leno and all that stuff. And so I thought I was going to pass away. I didn't. I woke up the next day with this giant, like 4-inch scar that had like congealed and didn't bleed out after all.
mhm,
And I said, this is my second lease on life, or my new lease on life. Took a comedy class that summer, and I started doing stand up. And stand up comedy in 2014 was really the first time I was comfortable with being in front of a microphone because it was something I really wanted to do. It
Mhm.
was something I go, I've seen death. Nothing could be scarier than that.
Right.
So when someone tells me, I don't know how you could be a comedian, it's nerve wracking. I go, yeah, it is. But
Yeah.
I had saw myself going into the light. So it was like, oh, it can't be that bad. But doing comedy in 2014 opened me up to be a wedding MC in 15, and that became a DJ in 16, and that became a commentary in 19, that became a esports shoutcaster in 20, and so on and so on.
Wow. So it's like literally one thing just led to another, and the momentum just never ceased for you.
You know what? It's funny because like Ian Fleming, which is the guy that wrote James Bond, it said like you only live twice. Once when you're born and once when you stare death in the face. And I feel like
Mm.
at that time that surgery was really like the start of the next chapter for your boy Flobo Boyce.
Wow, that is so interesting. And
Yeah.
you actually went and pursued your dreams, because I know some people that they stared death in the eyes and they said, I'm gonna go back and continue doing the same exact thing. So other than having that fear that you were gonna, pass away and never confront the actual attempts, what kept you going? Because it must have been something that gave you the opportunity or the mindset to think that maybe I can actually accomplish this. Or was it just that you didn't want to, pass away and just think that I never even tried?
So it's one of those things when like you're trying to like if you see like a chicken or a duck try to fly, it's like
Hmm.
they'll run, they'll jump, and they'll come down, and they'll
Yeah.
run and jump and come down, and then they'll fly.
Yeah.
So that first comedy class, it was actually a Groupon for my girlfriend at the time. She was like, "Hey, you want to do comedy, right? Go ahead and do it." And I'm going, okay. And so I was like deathly nervous with my little Groupon piece of paper,
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I went to the comedy school and I was early. And I guess the guy didn't think that he had students that early. It was like he came out when I showed up. He goes, "Hey, who are you?" And I was like, I'm here for the comedy class." He goes, "Get out of here. You're early." So I got into the car and I was like, now if that was me, if that was my Groupon, I would have gone home and the show would have been over. But I was living with my girlfriend at the time, and I didn't feel like I could go home and be like, "He scared me. I didn't do it." So I did the class, and I enjoyed the class, and
Hmm.
then I enjoyed my graduation, and that became a thing. So like, people say, "Are you self-made?" I go, "Yeah, there's a lot of drive that I have to do it, but the person that really gave me my first opportunity was my ex-girlfriend, and the fear of quitting at first, I couldn't do it because someone had bought into me. I'll give you
Mm.
another example. That surgery I had
Hmm.
to remove the excess skin was about, I mean, not to make it a money thing, it was about 8 grand. Didn't have it.
Yeesh.
I GoFundMe. Well, back then it wasn't GoFundMe. It was You Caring back then. But GoFundMe bought it, so I GoFundMe that.
Mhm.
And now I avoid Thanksgiving as I record this because it's an overeating holiday. Uh,
Mm.
14 of my friends chipped in to get me surgically created abs. So I'm going to be on
Interesting
the
way to
right
put it.
path because people bought in. People saw
Mm.
the work I did and say, "We have faith in you." And I bought in. So, on some level, yeah, a lot of it is hustle and grind and being yourself, but no one's really truly self made. You have to have that village, man. You got to have that support team, whether it's your parents, your friends, your family, to really go ahead and do it. You need someone to be like, you need cheerleaders to say, "Whatever happens, we'll do it." You need that one person who's like, "Okay, you're doing it, but how are you going to pay the bills?" Just one. Don't get too many of those, or else you won't do anything.
Right,
But
right, right.
it's okay to lean on people when you're first starting out, whatever the hell it is you want to do, to make sure you're not going off into the ether.
Now, just to give everybody like a little snippet of your book, because you did write a book. And for those that don't know, what is it primarily about?
Sure. So this is my first. So I've written 7 books before. About those are fiction. This book, Graduation Day, is my first memoir. When I graduated college, many many moons ago, I didn't. He meant well, but I didn't really care for my commencement speaker. He was like a regional manager at a Walmart, and he was talking about how his job is difficult and we can pull from. And I go, okay, great. But I felt like when I graduated, I had all the book smarts, but nothing really appealed to me that I can apply to. I
Mm.
already made the risk going from New York City to this small town in Florida,
Hmm.
to get this education. But what does it really mean? But what I realized that as an adult, the things that I pulled from my college days wasn't so much about any chapter in a book, but it was like dealing with people who disagree with you on a political level, or it was working fast because it was like a lot of short resources.
Mhm.
So I said, you know what? What would it be if I was brought back to my college to give a commencement speech? What would I say to those college kids when I was there? And so that's what graduation day is about. The first chapter is me sitting there talking about my experience giving a commencement speech. The
Yeah.
chapters they're going are the life lessons and principles that I learned as an adult. I'm talking about losing the weight or starting a stationary business, or when
Mhm.
that stationary business failed, how do I recover from that business? Or DJing a wedding in Italy, knowing full well I couldn't afford to fly out to Italy, but I wanted to save my business.
Mm.
And the last chapter was what would I actually would say in a commencement speech that could help 19, 20, 21 year olds if they're on their own path. So it's called Graduation Day. It's available on Amazon. So that's what it's really about. So commencement speech is bookended in the middle, just like chapters of stories that I've got into, situations I learned, or how to apply life lessons to, and how that would help me as an adult.
Now, I did want to ask, since you do a lot of public speaking as well as a whole list of different vocational kind of occupations, would that be something that you would be professionally interested in if your university or any other post-secondary education reached out to you to do that kind of a speech?
Nico. I would have say at first, if you would have asked me this 3 years ago, I'd have been like, "Oh hell no!" I'll tell you a story. So the March 2020,
Mhm,
literally the day when the world shut down,
mhm.
my undergrad had reached out to me and said, because I was a communication major, they said, "Hey, look, we have this thing called."
Ah,
I was broadcast. We have, because there's journalism stuff. We have this thing
of
called Com
course.
Week. We have this thing called Com Week. Do you want to come and teach the kids comedy? And I go, I don't. How do you teach someone? I mean, I got taught comedy, but
Mhm.
I'm just a schlub. What are you talking about? And so I flew out there with a curriculum that for a 2 hour seminar
Uh-huh.
in this I would say bar. It was like a community, like an Alamo Draft House, like a
Mhm,
community like theater.
mhm,
And I taught kids for 2 hours about how I approach comedy. And then at the end of it, there was like a showcase. If you wanted to do comedy, you could. And half the kids said yes, half the kids said no. And at that moment, I go, oh my gosh, the kids I coach are pretty good for first time, second
mhm,
time comics.
mhm.
I this is kind of cool. But I was literally the day the world shut. That's the day the NBA stopped, the NFL stopped. It was like
Uh-huh.
we did it because we were off campus, and then by Friday it was like get back to LA as soon as you can. So to answer your question, I'll be open to it. Yeah, that was a career path for me to share my experiences, especially as someone that came from the East Coast, went down to Florida, now living in the West Coast in entertainment. I've been in here for 20 years. Why the heck not?
And since you sound like somebody that is willing to give back as well as to teach, would that be something that you would pursue? Being either a trainer, consultant, or an advisor teacher, because it sounds like the individuals that are newer to shoutcasting or esport commentary, they reach out to you or you get plugged into them and you willingly give them material. Would that be something that you would add to the list of things that you do from all the things that you currently do now?
Oh yeah, I mean, when it comes to comedy and professional development, sure. I haven't monetized it yet. When people hit me up though, and if I can help them, I can. A lot of not so much now, but during the in the thick of the pandemic, I was like
Hmm.
the podcast guy. People hit me up all the time. How do you launch a podcast? I had at the most seven
Hmm.
or eight during the pandemic. But yeah, sometimes people hit me up for esports things. Absolutely, because it now more than ever on the esports side, they're looking for different voices and ages and colors and gender expressions. They are looking for that because
Mm.
it does seem pretty much one color for a lot of these sports now, or one or homogenous, I should say the word is. When it comes to professional development or comedy, also open. Haven't really thought about that as a career path or revenue stream or what have you, but there's so many situations where people hold back information and they try to be
Yeah,
gatekeepers. And you're
yeah.
like, once you realize that you can give anyone all the information they need and they still may not do it, then it becomes a lot more freeing, a lot more liberating. My favorite teachers aren't the ones that tell me to look in the book. They're the ones
Hmm.
that say, here's what I realized worked for me. your results may vary.
Exactly. Yes. And I'm surprised that you haven't thought about that because it sounds like you literally go in every opportunity in every endeavor and you're the go-to guy for the information.
Well, thank you. Crossing fingers, man. No, because it really was a community. With Rocket League specifically, it was a community that gave back to me because I
Mhm,
played it
mhm.
as an antidepressant. So anytime I can give back, and if I can, then I would. Like one of my rec league teams, minor league esports, I hang around in the caster channel and I'll do caster critiques. But anything
Mm.
beyond that, yeah, of course. If someone's interested in just like bringing me out to talk like this for a seminar or to bring tips and tricks of how to be confident on the microphone, that's something I would love to do.
Yeah, because I'm all about the empowerment and pushing. Now, I do want to have this weird question in my head because you started this during the pandemic, and now that we're phasing back to IRL things, would that be something that you would have to balance, like doing things in person now versus like virtually commentating? Because if you're
Sure.
going to go back to being a professional comedian and being on the road, would that be something that conflicts with your schedule?
So
Being a virtual commentator versus physically being in like clubs and bars and doing comedy?
So yes, but not the way you're thinking. So like the idea is being able to go to lands. I have not been to a true land yet. I've done a couple
Ah,
of things here in Los Angeles, but like I want to do RLCS. I want to do Top Flight. That hasn't quite happened yet. But it's not so much a comedy thing. It's like the DJ stuff. The wedding
mm,
DJ stuffs are weekends, and most lands are weekends. And so that's something I have to reconcile with. During the pandemic, like I mentioned a couple minutes before, I had at most 8 podcasts going simultaneously.
like
One
you
for
were the
Star,
host or co-host?
yeah, it's right here in this bedroom. I,
Yeesh.
I had a Star Trek show, a wrestling show. I had my art and culture podcast. I had my What's Up Flobo. I had my Netflix. Like I had one for every
Yo.
thing because no one was going anywhere, and I was
Mhm,
trying to
mhm.
give comedy for all these things. So when everyone think kind of opened up, and for me, it kind of hit me like spring of 2022. That's when things started ramping down. I didn't have to do Star Trek as much anymore. I didn't have to do wrestling as much anymore. I got my other responsibilities. And so that's stuff that's pretty much been won by the wayside. But I would love if this was the dream. If you told me if all things were created equal, I got the money I wanted, the lifestyle I wanted, and the car I wanted, and the music videos I wanted, definitely doing the comedy stuff during the week. Put me on the road, see me at this town, this theater, that theater, and on weekends, put on the jacket and do the commentary for the lands. Those two things are great because one of the cool things about in this industry now, cool things about being in the workforce in 2022 is that
Mhm.
there's more than one way to be yourself and make a
Ooh.
living for it. My
Ooh.
dad, my parents are immigrants, so my
Mhm.
mom was a nurse for 34 years. My dad worked on trains in New York City for 35 years,
Mhm.
and they were serving it to an organization. But I, Flobo Boyce, can be booked to do your wedding, to do your land,
Yeesh.
to do your speech, to do your
Okay.
podcast hosting. That didn't happen. 2 generations ago, my grandparents was out in crops cutting down sugar cane, man. Like I know I'm grateful. I know I'm grateful for what it is, but yeah, if I had the opportunity, I would definitely lean into those two things.
And more grateful than any other day, especially the day where people just stuff themselves. So that's actually so cool that you were able to put it in that manner because it literally gives you the facts of the matter that today's generation, today's opportunity and economy allows you to actually do what you love and hopefully get paid for it. Especially somebody that has so many different things that they're doing, but 8 podcasts now.
Yeah,
That brings me into time management.
yeah.
How do you juggle all your different responsibilities and how do you prioritize from the most important to something that could just be I'll do it later?
True. So I one have a calendar, right? You have the calendar. You say, "Hey, it's Thursday. New Amsterdam comes out this week. Promote New Amsterdam. Oh, it's Friday. Well, I kept Fridays open for this. I would like usually I would be Friday would be my interview, be a guest other shows day.
Mhm.
But you know what day you have to do for what responsibilities.
Right,
But
right.
people always ask you, how do you make 24 hours work? And I say you don't. I don't. What I did
Mm.
is I made 48 35-minute blocks or 30-minute blocks. because what people lose
Ah.
time on is when you have a interview or a call and it ends at 1:40 or
Mhm, mhm,
12:40 and we go,
mhm.
all right, at the next hour I'm gonna do this, and that's where you lose the time. There isn't like 4 hours mysteriously disappearing. It's you went grocery shopping for an hour, you pack groceries for 30 minutes, and you go, all right, I'm gonna sit here and chill out until the next hour. And so when I have my productivity calendar or clock, it's for 35 minutes on my phone.
Mhm.
I always set it. And at 35 minutes, when it's done, I have an option. I can reset for 35 more, or I have to move on to something else. So
Mm.
things that I would like anguish over, like writing an email, which would be like an hour long, I go, I got 35 minutes. If it's not done, I got to either drop it tomorrow or move on to something else or add more time. And
Mhm.
I think that got me into it. There's a theory I have about like the energy gas tank. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think everyone has a full gas tank and everyone has an empty gas tank. But the difference between someone who hustles and someone who doesn't is someone who's at third of a tank going, oh, I'll see you tomorrow, versus someone who goes, I'm going to ride it to quarter tank, for example. And those little small moments come from because those 20 minutes is when today, for example, it's Thanksgiving Day. And I'm
Right.
not trying to tell you to hustle because I know hustle culture can be toxic.
Yes.
But today, but today I called my mom. I went for a run. I paid some bills. You know what I mean? In those small gaps of those
Yes.
hours, those
Mhm,
15 minutes at the end of an hour, I was
mhm.
able to do a little something for myself. And by the end of the day, I had that on top of my other responsibilities done. And it was already noon. Only thing on my schedule for the past 6 hours was your show. I was like, cool. I'm going to lay out. You know what I'm saying? Grab myself a nice little cool beverage. It was great.
Now, out of all the things that you do, since it sounds like you have a phenomenal way of time managing, how do you prevent anything to happen to your voice? Since it sounds like your voice is the number one benefactor of all of your professions. Like, do you have specific rituals, specific drinks, specific sleep schedules? Like, how do you protect your most valuable asset being your voice?
Sometimes you just say, I'm gonna go for it. Whatever. you know? It depends on the show. Like if someone's paying a lot of money or if it's top flight, you just go, I'll just blow it out and get it done later. But yeah, it's true what they say. Hydrate. Hydrate's the number one thing. And if you drink Powerade or Gatorade, which is fine, you have to be active because it's just salt, right? But I mean like water, coconut juice, coconut water, sleeping. I drink a lot of caffeine. You really shouldn't. But if you can, let's say from the caffeine. There's only been one time where I blew up my voice to the point where I couldn't
Hmm.
perform. But that's when I talked to you about hype versus energy, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So once you understand and establish you could be hype or you could be energetic without the high registers, then you can always bring it down and go, oh my gosh, this is going to be a good banger here, Nico. I'm telling you, brother, you got to be involved with that because that will bail you out on that next show when you have totally, you know what I'm saying, exhausted your voice. And so, yes, take care of it. If it's your instrument, it belongs to you. Sleep if you can, hydrate, and avoid alcohol and caffeine if you can. No judgment if you can.
Now, for somebody who plays the game, do you commentate on yourself when you're playing, or do you commentate in your head, or do you vocalize like when you're playing, or like? Because I've always wondered, like, since you're now a professional, do you catch yourself saying like, "This is what I would have said if somebody was watching me"?
Oh yeah, all the time, all the time. That's how I audition new stuff. I'm not a
Ah,
firm believer. I don't like the casters who keep joke books or commentary books because they seem forced. Like when someone
mm.
goes, "Oh man, I have to take a shower because that shot was dirty." It's like, oh yeah, you wrote that down somewhere. But because it's cheesy, right? It's super cheesy. But when you're
Yo.
playing with yourself and you go, oh man, he shanked it, or oh man, that was or more importantly for me is vocabulary. So a
Mm,
lot of the times people will tell me, you have these way with words, and how do you do that? Because when you're in the run of a game, you kind of rely on the same words you always do. You end up saying awesome 10 times, you end up saying fantastic 10 times.
mhm,
And I
mhm.
go, well, the way I train myself is that I find a new word and find out what it means. So let's say this is the cool salubrious is a word. Salubrious
Interesting.
means very, very cool. For those of you who don't know, I know you don't, Nico. You're a smart brother. But salubrious is something else. But like, so how do I put that in my vocabulary? You have to say it out loud because you can't be like, whatever, salubrious. So I will go and I'll play and I'll go, oh, what a salubrious display. I'll try accents. Oh, salubrious, 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 you know? So when it comes down to the run of play and I'm like casting in the moment, that word has been said so many times, it now exists in the frontal lobe of my brain. So now I can be like, oh, that was a salubrious play. Fantastic strike. Inglorious. You know what I mean? So people go, where you get these words from? It's because I think it's one time I did a show and someone missed an easy shot. And I was like, I am bewildered, befuddled, flummoxed, and flabbergasted as to why they did that. They're like, did you write that down? I go, no, but that was 2.5 hours of training saying those words while playing the game myself.
Wow, that is so interesting. So you are a wizard of the words. That is so
Sometimes.
no, that and that's actually pretty impressive how you're able to train yourself because it's as you said, if you're not capable of doing that massive amount of practice on your own, it's not going to come out in a very natural and authentic way. It's going to sound very forced. And to play and to actually use it on yourself to make it seem like, okay, did this flow correctly? Did this make sense? Or would this have been better if I did it on the offensive play versus the defensive play? Or just on a mistake or just on a like well connected play. So that's actually pretty intriguing that you're able to practice on yourself. And how do you decide which word you use? Do you just look through like word of the day on dictionary.com or do you just go on the dictionary and just randomly point to a word or just search up adjectives? How do you come up with which word you're going to train yourself on?
I wish I was that disciplined. I'm not. So I do I wish no for real. I should do that. That's my mom who was always like, look at the dictionary. No, I use a word of the day email or a word of the day calendar. So I had a calendar a couple of years ago, and if you get one of those, great. The one I use is the word genius. So if you sign up for Word Genius, they'll send you a word of the day, and sometimes the words are like archaic, and you're like, what the hell? I'm not gonna I can't use that. And then some words you do get words like acidulous or like salubrious or like befuddled. And you're like, oh, maybe I can use that just to be kind of cool. And sometimes you'll try it and you go, nah, that doesn't work. And I think that helps out with comedy too. You know, people always say, oh, you're a comedian, just go on stage and tell jokes. I go, one of the things you do miss when you're at home or working on material is crowd response or
Right,
how does
right,
it
right.
feel when you say it. So when I rehearse on my own and I go to a stream and I say it and the chat goes, what the heck is he talking about? That's weird. I don't know. You know what I mean? I go, okay, not doing that. But since I play around, and so there's one time, for example, and please, for those of you who are listening from England, I apologize. But I have this bit where I go when a shot goes in and it's amazing. Go, well, as they say in England, that shot was absolutely extraordinary, and there's more in the offing, and that came from FIFA because
Yeah, yeah,
FIFA
yeah,
had these
yeah.
like homespun phrases. More in the offing is something I never even heard of until I watched FIFA. But I said it like that, and it came out of nowhere because I'm a brother from Brooklyn, right? So when people in the chat goes, did he just say absolutely extraordinary? And it becomes like a bit, and everyone's kind of cracking up. As a comedian, I go, I've won. Whether or not that's the best call to make it a situation, as long as people are entertained enough to be engaged enough to write down the chat, win, lose, or draw, that I've done my job as a color caster there because people are understanding there's more value to listening to us than just having us on mute.
Now, for just like it's so intriguing. Do you ever have like any of your co-casters like literally ask you what that word means, especially if it's a word that's like out of the ordinary or
Oh
especially out of
yeah.
their normal vocabulary?
So it could be embarrassing, but I always make it into a bit. No, sorry, because it could be like, oh, sorry, you know what I mean? But like, when someone goes, what the hell are you talking about, Nova? And I go, it's an SAT word. Look it up. Read a book. Have you read a book before? So like that banter covers me because it doesn't make me look like I don't know what I'm doing. But because we break
No.
down and have that like moment of like friendship on stream, people go, oh, these people are having a time of their life. They're having fun. And if they're having fun, I'm having fun. You know.
Man, and since you have so many voices, I just want to throw out an additional occupation possibility. have you ever thought about doing audiobooks? Because the way that you have so many different ranges of voices, so many accents, I'm just thinking like if I wrote a book with like 15 different voices, I wouldn't need to hire 15 different people. I'd just be like, yo, I need to hit a Flobo. He got all the voices.
Thank you so much. I mean, I've dabbled. Nothing's really worked out of it yet, but if I find the right project, of course, I will definitely do that. The more things I can do where I can just be myself, that is the name of the game. I will do it. Find me the gig there, Nico.
Well, with that said, I do want to wrap it up because I'm having so much fun and I don't want to steal any more of your time. So thank you so much for joining, giving us literally insight into what goes on to being an esports commentator, shoutcaster, comedian, entertainment network owner, wrestler fanatic, podcaster, author, so many different things. And who knows in 12 months what else is going to come your way, because with every 12 months you're having like a new profession and you're able to juggle it like a professional juggler at the circus, just 15, 16 different occupations, no worries.
Yeah, thank you.
And so anybody that does listen to this in the future, just know that Flowboy, he might not be available, so you need to hit him up right now. Like right now,
Please.
hit him up right now for anything that you have going on. Other than
Yeah.
that, thank you so much for taking the time once again, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show. So much fun to talk about the craft.
And before I have you go, I do want to give you that one other opportunity to give yourself a little more fluff, a little more extravagant, and a little bit more credibility, as well as let them know where they can support you as well.
First of all, I got to support my man Nico over here. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done that already. What are you waiting for? Just taking that free content without a subscribe? What is wrong with you? But if you're down with that, flobito.com, FLOBITO.com, and my business, newamsterdam.com. That's KNEW, Amsterdam.com. Follow those websites, learn more about me.
Alrighty, with that said, take care and have a great rest of your night. And I hope everybody that heard was able to enjoy.